Hello, race fans. I'm Denny Miller, and welcome to Indy 500 Yesteryear. And today, with Speedway Insiders Paul Page, Bob Gates, and we have a special guest today, Mike Lashmett, who, and you can see my shirt that I'm wearing today, Vintage Indy, that I was given to Mike when I was able to have the glorious honor of touring his fantastic shop. Mike, can you remember, and all of you guys remember, when the Simpson black jacket first came out and what a coveted possession that was? I kind of put this in that same league there and everything. So thank you for that. It was a fun day, and I had never been to Working Man's Tavern, and that was Robin's favorite. And as always, this show is dedicated to the memory of Robin Miller. Mike knew him well, and you're going to tell us a Robin Miller story before the end, right?
I'm sure
unfiltered and uncensored and everything. But first, we want to report kind of a disturbing news that has just started to surface. Joseph Newgarden, who won the first race of the doubleheader at Iowa convincingly, and was well on his way to his second win when something broke in the rear end of his car and somewhat hard hit into the wall. They were interviewing him afterwards. He apparently was cleared at the medical hospital and then released, and then had a medical condition. Paul, you've been on top of this story. Can you share with us what you're hearing at this moment?
Yeah, well, Team Penske says that they that he fell in his coach unconscious, and that alone, I mean, that we mentioned off the air here a few minutes ago, that right away I'm thinking Mark Donohue and the subdural hematoma that he suffered. We got hit by one of the fence posts. So the one thing is he fell in his coach, but there's another story going around from in the crews that they actually found him, a crew member actually found him outside of the coach, and he was in a muscle spasm. I mean, couldn't move any of his muscles. So we always respect what the teams put out, and that's what we report. But I thought that was a pretty wide chasm between but crew members, God love them, sometimes, no. So anyhow, yeah. And then you had a second issue there in the race, so it wasn't covered visually or audibly, and that was that as Kellett came in for his last pit stop, he hit the guy that was doing his left rear tire, and it's a pretty good hit, pinned him between the tire and the wall. And he is reported to have a large gash in his leg, but also there was a whole second story out there. That large gash comes, by the way, from Ann Panoro of AJ Foyt Racing. But there was another story that he broke his femur, and he even got on the internet, put a picture of himself in the ambulance and says he broke his femur. So I don't know. I know there were two really good races and a giant crowd. So that's
Glad of that. Bob, what's now being surfaced if Newgarden can't race this coming weekend at the Speedway in the IndyCar NASCAR doubleheader. Who's going to be the replacement in car number 2? You want to share with that breaking story as well?
Well, I don't know about breaking the story, but Ferrucci is, I heard, is standing by for that seat, and he's been a very good stand-in, in situations like that. Filled in more than once and done a very admirable job at doing that. I hate to see Joseph miss the race coming up here at Indy, but I sure would like to see Ferrucci in a Penske car. That'd be interesting to see as well.
I think that's official from Penske now, that they put that out officially, that he's on standby pending the tests on Thursday.
Right.
But just being linked to drive a Penske car is really a feather in Ferrucci's cap, and that may help him be on the short list of several teams now for this coming year. I think that's great. They really need his colorful type style in IndyCar, in my opinion. But we will stay on top of both the McFadden and the Newgarden story and talk about it on our next episode. We do always begin, Mike, with a fun few tidbits of things, and we've got 3 of them listed today. One was Tony Kanaan at the dirt track in the speedway in the third turn, drove the number 39 BC midget and just absolutely loved it, and said he didn't realize how much work that was involved in it, and he potentially may run a midget again sometime. Bob, what do you know about Kanaan and the midget ride? I know you're fairly close to the Clausens.
Well, you mentioned he enjoyed it, and he certainly did. And I think the Speedway would love to see Tony or even some of the other guys. Connor Daly, is a name that pops up. Ferrucci is another one that pops up. They would like to see some guys like that, in that midget race, that B39 midget race. Of course, Tony's got some experience, dirt track experience as well with Tony Stewart's SRX series. So I think that's just the next step for him to do something, like a midget. A lot more nimble, a lot more power, really power to weight anyway, than the SRX cars.
Is this morphing into the top midget race in the country now, or one of the top 5? Just because it's at the Speedway and the crossover you get?
Well, anything at the Speedway always gets a lot of attention. I don't think it's reached quite the status yet that, say, the Chili Bowl and some other midget races, but just being at the Speedway, especially in conjunction with some other races that'll be going on there, makes it special in itself.
I was interested in him saying how physical it was, because you're talking TK, that's a very fit guy.
Triathlon type
him. Yeah, right.
So, and then mentioning Stewart and SRX series, so this just is really kind of mind blowing. The winner of this year's series is Marco Andretti, and who never was brought up on dirt and everything. I think Marco really had a good time in it. We had the results on the 6th and final race. Chase Elliott.
While you're looking, I'm just going to say, I think it's in his genes from his grandfather.
Oh, I would agree with you, Paul.
Yeah.
Mario always told me that next to Indianapolis, his second favorite track was Springfield.
Yeah.
And that he loved to pull out on that fresh dirt on Springfield and have Bronner push him out and be the first car to go out and practice. So I would agree to that. It's in his genes.
Well, Mike, I'm sure you know that when they formed the super team with Joe Leonard, Al Unser, and Mario Andretti, Bell Sparnelli, that part of the deal for Mario and Al Sr. were to have dirt cars, even though the dirt tracks weren't part of the championship by then. So they loved running it.
But we had the dirt car for Al, and that car sits today over in the lobby of the USAC office building. And a lot of people don't realize, but that's probably the winningest dirt car ever built.
Really?
Probably the most poles ever won by a dirt car too. That car's history goes all the way back to 69. Bignotti ordered that car from Grant King, and originally in 69 was the Vels Parnelli Jones Ford dirt car. Then obviously in 70, 71, Johnny Lightning, and then from there on till the end of its career, the Viceroy car. Had a long history, a lot of wins. And when Mario came on board, Vel and Parnelli and George ordered a second Grant King car. You're correct, Bob, for Mario. And those guys went at it hammer and tongs.
Yeah.
Did Joe Leonard ever drive the dirt much?
Joe did drive dirt. He, like Gordy Johncock, I don't think had much admiration for dirt. They didn't care for it, especially Gordy. But Joe Leonard did run dirt. I remember seeing him at Springfield in '67, and he did run dirt
Yeah.
up to a point in his career.
But the Springfield race would not have topped the Hoosier 100 and the Prestige by any means, would it?
No, I think Bob would agree with me. I think up until the time Ontario Motor Speedway was built, the Hoosier 100 was the second highest paying race on the USAC Championship
Yeah.
Car circuit.
Right.
And once Ontario got built, that changed a bit. But the Hoosier 100 was tremendously prestigious. To win there, sit on pole, that undoubtedly, was a high achievement. And it's sad that it's not any longer a venue for motorsports.
Right. It sure is.
Well, Marco breaks his wrist in the race in a contact with Ryan Newman. He had a finish in the top 10, I think. Chase Elliott did beat Tony Stewart. Here's the actual rundown. Elliott was first, Tony Stewart second, Matt Kenseth third, Ryan Hunter-Ray fourth, Bobby LeBounty fifth, Greg Biffle sixth, Ryan Blaney seventh, Ryan Newman eighth, Marco Andretti ninth, Paul Tracy 10th, Tony Kanaan 11th, Dave Blaney 12th, and Michael Waltrip 13th. And again, I'm really impressed with what Stewart's doing, getting these marquee names in there. And it's just, I think it's only going to grow and grow, and they have to be quite pleased with it. And then the third story that caught my eye was that because he won one of those SRX races, Castroneves was kind of promised that he could have a potential car in the Daytona 500, and Helio wants to run that. And there's not been that many people that have ran both Daytona 500 and the Indianapolis 500, and fewer that have won Indy that have raced at Daytona. It'd be nice to see Helio get that ride. I don't know the CEO, Don Hawk, at all, but apparently he's trying to broker some sort of a deal on that. It'd be nice to see that crossover because that benefits IndyCar as well. So, Mike, we always kind of lead with, after we get this fun stuff out of the way, the most recent race, and we had a doubleheader. There's only doubleheader that is on this year's schedule at Iowa. It's neat to see it back on schedule. A huge shout out for Hy-Vee and what they did to make it just a special weekend. And I want to compliment even too how they pulled in such big name entertainment. Tim McGraw and Georgia Florida Line performed before and after the first race on Saturday, and then Gwen Stefani and Blake Shelton on Sunday. So that's huge names. You had a Olympic gold medalist. I'm not an Olympic person, but Sean Johnson East was Grand Marshal on Saturday. And then Mark Wahlberg, the famed actor, was on Sunday. So they had some heavyweights in there, and they brought in all these portable Hy-Vee convenience stores where they could go in there, go in there.
Yeah, their activation was phenomenal. I give a lot of credit to everybody involved: Penske Entertainment, IndyCar, Hy-Vee certainly, and Ray Hall, Letterman Lanigan Racing. I think they hit a home run there. 40,000 attendees each day. I was shocked at that. I would have never predicted that. That puts it right up there with behind Indianapolis, close to Gateway or WWT Raceway and Long Beach and Road America. I mean, it's in the top 5 in attendance, I would think. But they did a great job out there. It looked great on TV. I texted Bobby Rahal last night and I said, let's get Vintage IndyCar there next year. I want to go there. Our guys all want more ovals. I think we need more ovals. And I think they just did an outstanding job. My hat's off to everybody involved.
Yeah, absolutely.
Do you think with that kind of success and the fact that Penske owned Michigan and owned Fontana, that might start creeping back into a conversation Paul, what do you think on that?
As far as track ownership is concerned?
Well, no, just running another race there again to add to the ovals.
Yeah,
Again,
I think that's a possibility. I think that when you combine all those forces, obviously, they did an outstanding job in promotion. I think Hy-Vee gets a tremendous amount of credit because I think they put together a heck of a team for activation. Activation is a big part of sponsorship. And, you know, for everything they did there, I don't know if you noticed on TV, the portable chalets that were built around the track, branded Hy-Vee, obviously for their guests and whatnot. It just looked spectacular. And then they had taken what looked like containers and turned them into, you know, portable or temporary convenience stores. And they got a lot of positive press on TV. I watched all the practice and qualifying the race on Peacock, and it was nothing but positivity for them.
Yeah.
Peacock is, if you can't be there, just fantastic now. Well, Paul, can you remember back in 2013 when they ran Fontana in October, and it was an evening race? So that was well attended.
Yeah, very well attended.
And they jacked around with it and then moved it earlier.
Yeah.
And then the absolute idiocy of moving it to like the middle of June and at daytime, and it was blisteringly hot. See, this is going to segue into the heat of Iowa here in a second. But, you know, I think always felt a mid-October race nighttime would work at Fontana. And I know there's always been people that want to go back to Michigan again. The fact that Penske owned both of those and the success he had this weekend at Iowa, do you see that possibly entering the conversation the next year or two?
It would be nice. I love Fontana. Quick story about Fontana. There was an aluminum blast furnace there, and they had to do something, you know, that was basically an aluminum manufacturing company that had that property. But they had this giant chunk of aluminum that was the bottom of the blast furnace. And what do you do with that? I mean, it was big. It was, you know, like 15 feet high or something. So they dug a giant hole and pushed it into it. It's still in the middle of the track out there. I like Fontana at night a lot. I think the thing that really got the official attention at Fontana that IndyCar is not there anymore was accident that the IRL had. One right at the finish, and I remember being in a booth and just looking down, and I was looking at the bottom of a race car. And and there's also in the further past some issues IndyCar v NASCAR. So, but I think with Roger in there, you know, all that goes away, and like you say, he has a love for it. He helped build it, and typical Roger there, you could camp inside and the newspaper was dropped at your door every morning.
There used to be that deal when to get NASCAR tickets, you had to buy the champ car tickets.
Yeah.
I don't know, that obviously went by the wayside because crowds are way down at Texas and places like that. But, you know, I think that's one way of getting a bigger crowd is if they package it. And what's happening this weekend, we'll talk about it later as we conclude the doubleheader at Indianapolis with NASCAR coming and IndyCar. I think that cross-pollination is good. Well, it was Will Power made news, winning both polls. And what did that do to his standing to his position to Mario, Bob?
Well, of course, it tied him for the number of polls with Mario, which is a huge honor for Will Power, which he acknowledged very well. I think he was very much aware of it. He even made a comment when it looked like he had the pole. It was kind of off mic, but a comment to the effect that this will tie the record or words to that effect. I'm kind of paraphrasing at that point. So he's aware of it, and it means a lot to him. That's good to see. The newer drivers of this era very much, knowledgeable about the history of the sport. So one more pole, and he'll surpass Mario. Mario's been kind of hit hard this year, hasn't
Now with
Yeah.
Dixon last week or something. Well, it was miserably hot there, particularly on Saturday. And Joseph Newgarden just ran away from the field. It was like a 6-second victory over Pato O'Ward. My takeaway, one of the neat things, and that was Jimmie Johnson led like
Yeah.
19 laps.
Great run.
And I think
Great
that
run.
if Ganassi is strong again next year as a team, and there's no reason to think it will not be, then I think you really have to put Jimmie Johnson as a potential winner of the Indy 500. I mean, that what he did as a rookie at Indy, and then this performance at Iowa, I think you start to really like oval racing and IndyCar a lot and everything. You can kind of tell it.
Well, there's a lot in that transition there. People will think, well, one oval's the same in this car or that car, but IndyCar is a pretty special piece of machinery. And unless you've come up in that whole high speed rear engine school, jumping from a cup car into an Indy car, that's night and day. That's entirely different. I really enjoyed that. He performed so well. And I agree with you that if next year at Indy, I would put him in my list for being a contender.
Do you see the day that he'll be more like Ed Carpenter and just run the ovals and let the younger gun run the road courses, because he consistently runs toward the back in those. And that is almost a young person's game. Kanaan never ran, and Castroneves is finding that kind of the case. They're not up there with the Hertas and the O'Wards and the VKs and those anymore. But I think it's just absolutely great for IndyCar that is there, and I'm sure that's pulling some NASCAR eyeballs into IndyCar racing for sure.
What was neat about Jimmie on, both days, primarily Saturday though, is he wasn't afraid to try some different lines.
Yeah.
Mhm.
And, experiment with some different ways around the track. And that made it very, very exciting. I think when some of the guys saw what he was able to do up high on Saturday, they modeled that for themselves on Sunday. So even though Newgarden ran away with the race on Saturday, it was still a very good race. If nothing else, watching Jimmie Johnson.
Yeah. I think though, to your point, Denny, is that's probably more of a sponsor call. I mean, he's got that great sponsor in Carvana. They may want the exposure of him running everything, but
very good point. Yeah.
I could see him just running ovals, but I don't think
But he's getting better. Time-wise, he is getting better on the road courses too.
Yeah.
It's still, the results are somewhat similar, but he's more at a closer narrow gap or something. What race did you think
the courage to do it?
What race did you like better? What did you think was a better race? Race one on
Second
Saturday.
race.
Mike, how about you? Which one was your favorite?
I like the second race. I'm a fan of Pato O'Ward and Zach Brown and McLaren, and I was thrilled to see him win. And I thought the second race was the better of the two. I thought they were both excellent.
Yeah.
But I was happy to see Pato come. He was in third place for a long time, and he got up there and pulled it off. And I think that's a great thing for Zach and everybody over at McLaren.
Yeah.
Had it been just the one race, what kind of crowd and atmosphere there would have been, do you think?
I think they nailed it with two races and the entertainment. We mentioned before going on live here that, I read an article this morning online that Roger is touting Iowa for the future as the Sturgis of IndyCar. It's going to be this happening. And, maybe that's not a bad idea. I mean, it's way out there on I-80, and there's not much around there. Newton, Iowa is not a very big place. And, but obviously they pulled people in. I don't know where the heck everybody stayed because the hotel situation is not real good out there. But, but they had a great crowd. I mean, the
Yeah.
grandstand looked full. I mean, it really did.
It's
So
not
I
too
think
bad.
there's a lesson to be learned from some other tracks with what they
Right.
did at Iowa.
Yeah.
You know,
Well, they had the perfect setup there at Iowa. I mean, a good multi-groove track to begin with, so the racing is normally good. But they had that events a sponsor in Hy-Vee, and just that's what you really need. That promotes it, brings people in, provides. I'm sure they help with the entertainment, the cost of the entertainment, the suites, as someone mentioned already. That's really what, especially oval tracks, I think really needs that type of thing.
and
Be a
the
great-
upside, Bob, for Hy-Vee is Hy-Vee's getting ready to expand into other Midwestern markets. I know for a fact they're getting ready to go into Nashville and Indianapolis markets. So their marriage with IndyCar is just it's perfect for what they want to do. And
Right.
I think they
Right.
realize that, and all the plans seem to mesh together. Both Hy-Vee's growth plan, their marketing plan, IndyCar, et cetera.
I hope IndyCar can keep them happy.
And if you've never been in a Hy-Vee store, they're fabulous stores. And there's some over in Illinois. I went in one in Quincy, Illinois, when I took Al Jr. over as Grand Marshal at the Quincy Grand Prix of Karting a year ago in May. And the activation in the store then for what was coming up with Rahal Letterman Lanigan team was phenomenal. I was very impressed. So
For those who have never been in a Hy-Vee store, what are they exactly, Mike?
well, they're grocery stores, and then they've got convenience gas station stores. And if you go in one and it's during the IndyCar season, it's readily apparent that they are involved in IndyCar racing, because there's IndyCar everything everywhere, that has to do, at least the one I was in with Rahal Letterman Lanigan's team. So I can only imagine what, was happening in those stores prior to this doubleheader at Iowa.
Well, I guess they certainly recognize Jack Harvey a lot with all his face plastered all over the posters and on TV and everything.
Yeah.
And I'm sitting here in my office in Brownsburg, Indiana, and our shop is located directly behind Rahal Letterman Lanigan. And I'm looking over there right now at a show car trailer that is wrapped all in Hy-Vee and, everything else that team has as sponsors. And they've got a massive QR code on that trailer. So if you're a fan, you can walk up to that trailer with your cell phone, scan that QR code, and I would assume it takes you into, a trip through all that they're doing with IndyCar and that team. So
to congratulate Jack Harvey too. He had been for pretty much the whole season a back marker as far as qualifying, and he did a nice job qualifying for both of the races this weekend. And I think his car went away from him relatively early, but that had to have been somewhat pleasing for Hy-Vee at their home race to see him qualifying. And I think he briefly was on the provisional pole as they were going through the qualifying order. So, Paul, what do you think was the better of the two races?
Oh, I think Sunday definitely. Again, as Mike said, O'Ward. He's a pretty special person as well as a driver, and I really enjoyed that. And yeah, the mix with McLaren, etc. By the way, since McLaren is also in Formula One, Leclerc, who was on the pole at the Formula One race in France, something broke and he didn't finish the race. Boy, and that's a big shock. Back to Iowa. I would like to see the Saturday race as a night race.
Yeah.
Little cooler track and everything. I'd really like to do that. That'd be fun. And I will say that the one of the world's great steakhouses is not far from the track. And I will definitely not tell you because all the crews know about it and it gets crowded real quick. But most importantly is Storm Lake, Iowa. There you have a memorial where the airplane crashed, the day the music died.
Oh,
and
yeah.
I had to go make that trip just to make sure. And it's not far from the track either.
Right.
So, and Paul, do you conclude also that race 2 is the better race? You enjoy that better?
You asking me?
No, I'm sorry, Bob.
No, I thought so.
Say that again.
Yeah, I
Denny.
said, are you in agreement too? You like the Sunday race better?
Yeah, yeah, it seemed that, for one thing, I think what helped Sunday was they could change their car setup. On Saturday, they had to run what they qualified with as far as setup. So it gave them the opportunity to do teams to do some different things with their setups, and I think made for a better race.
Well, two things out of that was Jimmie Johnson's best finish, where he finished fifth, and he beat his teammate and point leader, Marcus Ericsson. And I know there was some comment on network TV, should that happen? I think that's a good question to discuss. Do you think they will regret that at the end of the season, that flip-flop of positions? You know, there's been when
I'd like to.
Franchitti and Montoya tied and it cost them the tiebreaker. That could be a
Couple of great points. I like what Jimmie Johnson said, though, and maybe you all caught that. Afterwards, they asked him about that, and about showing respect for the points leader and so on. And he said, I've shown respect for my teammates for 2 years. And basically, he said it was time for me to do the best I could. And, he won the race, and, he raced hard and got the position.
Well, listen to
hopefully
this.
It will come down to those 2 points at the end of the year, but who knows?
But
On
on
TV, they had a time lapse of them rewrapping the Johnson car. His livery on Saturday was different than it was on Sunday, and it was pretty cool watching them rewrap that car overnight.
Right.
Well, the standings got incredibly close, and this is just amazing about IndyCar. Ericsson still leads with 403 points. Will Power second at 395. Newgarden and Dixon are tied for third and fourth with 369. O'Ward is moved up with a second and a first place finish to 367, and Alex Below is at 359. And that's going to make for an interesting second half of the season for sure. And that's just what makes IndyCar that much more special and everything. So now, with that out of the way, our special guest, Mike, you had a big event at Road America Elkhart Lake with, I think, was it 28 Gurney Eagles on display? You want to tell a little bit about that event? Or first of all, let's back up just a bit for those who really don't know quite what Vintage Indy is all about. Would you want to tell us briefly about what you do and how this series, what you're doing, is growing in popularity?
Well, Vintage Indy is in its 6th year, and it started out simply as a registry to keep track of all the restored Vintage Indy cars that became apparent to me were out there. And after the first year, we started getting contacted by promoters of IndyCar races, in particular Chris Blair down at St. Louis at WWT Raceway, and George Brugenthies, then CEO up at Road America, to bring Vintage Indy cars there with IndyCar. And we really didn't do that at the time, but I agreed to go to St. Louis and take a meeting with Chris Blair, and he can be pretty persuasive, and I really liked him and Curtis Francois and the team down there. So we inked a deal with them, and we went there for our first on-track event in 2018 for the Bommarito 500, and we've grown by one event every year, and this year we're doing 5 events. We have over 300 members representing about 200 cars. We don't have all of the cars in Vintage Indy that are out there restored, but we have a lot of them, and we average about 25 to 30 cars per event. And we're getting ready to leave the middle of next week to go to Nashville for the 2nd year at Music City Grand Prix. Really looking forward to that. And as you mentioned, a week ago this past weekend, we were at Road America with 28 Dan Gurney Eagles for the Dan Gurney AAR Eagles celebration. 3 of Dan's sons were there. Justin with his wife and 2 daughters, Alex with his wife and 2 daughters, and Danny, who's a good friend of mine who helps me with Vintage Indy, and his partner Jackie. And there was some former AAR alumni there, and it was just a spectacular weekend. 28 outstanding Eagles in paddock, and about half of them on track on both Saturday and Sunday. So it was quite memorable. A lot of fans there. This was all part of the WeatherTech with Brian Redmond Vintage event. There were about over 400 vintage race cars there for the weekend in all the different classes, and then the 28 Eagles, which were paddocked up on the hill and where normally the IndyCar paddock would be. So it was quite memorable.
And all
And
three,
I'm thrilled to have been a part of it.
three of the biggest Gurney creations ever were there, wasn't the one that he won Spa with, and Bobby Unser's car, and then the winning car too. Is that indeed accurate?
The Revs Institute, formerly the Collier Automotive Museum, which some people are familiar with down in Naples, Florida, which is a fabulous museum now called the Revs Institute. They own and brought up the 1967 Eagle that Dan won the Belgium Grand Prix with, or Spa in '67. The only time an American driver constructor won an F1 race. And they also own Bobby's winning car from '75. And that car was also there, the Jorgensen Steel Eagle. And the Pepsi Challenger was there, which Mike Mosley famously put on the front row. Indy. Rick Duman we took 4 cars up from the shop here, 2 that were just recently restored, the Jerry Grant 1973 Olsenite Eagle and Mike Mosley's number 98 leader card Eagle. And there were a lot of race winning cars there. I think I figured that there was one 66 Eagle, that being Bobby Rahall's restored 66 Eagle, Pacesetter Holmes car. There were 4 67s, a 68 that Dan finished second at Indy with. There were 2 69. Ray Skillman had a Joe Leonard's car there, and Phil Gumford had a car that Dan drove in 69 there. There was Chuck Jones's 1970 Eagle that Dan drove in his last 500. A newly restored car by Don Hovel and Chuck Jones, and so forth and so on. And then several Blatt Eagles from the 80s, the Spa winning Eagle, 2 F5000 cars of Eagle Formula Ford, and the famous GTP Toyota GTP. So it was a mixed bag of decades worth of cars from AAR. For those that don't know, AAR turned out over 160 cars in the handful of decades they were in the race car business, and a lot of them were winning cars and pole winning cars and important cars, and it was just phenomenal to see these cars there. And
didn't you get a very nicely penned letter from Dan Gurney's widow?
Did Evie sent me a
can you share some of that
last week? I mean, basically, she was thrilled and said Dan was smiling down on the event. And she wasn't able to attend. Her sister was here visiting from Europe, and so she didn't come. But she just praised everybody and everything that we did. I mean, we all left there, and we were kind of sad because we didn't want to leave, to be quite honest with you. Great, but we are talking about keeping this event going, if not doing it every year, if not at Road America, at some other track, and or doing it like Rennsport does and bringing the Eagles together every few years, say 4 years or every other year, something like that. I think it's something that should be done for Dan, for the mark. I mean,
Pavarotti, Placido Domingo, and Carreras, every World Cup would do a special concert. I love the idea. At least you do it every 4 years or something. But Paul, I got to ask you this.
I was fortunate enough to crew on Eagles that won races. So I went to Victory Lane, at Ontario with Dallenbach, and several times with Gordy with Eagles. I mean,
that's right.
Say they were my favorite race car that I ever worked on.
Yeah.
Well, Paul, now Robin came up with that fascinating shirt, called it the Mount Rushmore of racing, which was AJ Foyt, Parnelli Jones, Mario Andretti, and Dan Gurney on that. You were in the booth many, many times with Bobby Unser. Who did Bobby Unser want to bump off that and be on the Mount Rushmore? Did he ever talk much about that to you?
No, but I suspect if you'd asked that question of him, you would have gotten a 45-minute answer on
Right.
definitely why he should be there and also why others should not be there. I think his vision would be Bobby.
Right.
Other guys, maybe not.
Yeah, and Paul, Bobby did rib Robin for not being on that shirt. I can assure you that. So
Yeah.
Bobby would be more like the Crazy Horse Memorial. It should be a Bobby Unser Memorial.
But Gurney's the only non-Indy winner on that that list and everything. So I can see where Unser thinking a three-time winner, being particularly Bobby Unser would be. Well, Mike, I'm interested now on this great event that happens soon after Indy, where the vintage stuff comes and they have some racing. What are you involved with that? And do you see that's becoming even a bigger footprint of what your guys are doing?
well, you're speaking of SVRA Indianapolis, the Indianapolis Speed Tour of Tony Perella's at with SVRA, and that initially was not on our schedule when we announced our schedule this year. And all our guys want to do more ovals, just like IndyCar maybe wants to do more ovals. So I had looked into renting the Milwaukee Mile on the tail end of the Harry Miller Club event. A lot of our owners have both front and rear engine cars, and the Harry Miller Club was amenable to that. And I was pretty close to inking a contract to rent the Milwaukee Mile when, out of the blue, Tony Perella called me up. And he said, I'd really like to have Vintage Indy cars at Indianapolis. And I said, yeah, well, I would too. I didn't have to think about that too long. And so we had a nice conversation. I said, if we go, we'd love to be on the oval, not just the road course. I think we could get a really good car count. And so he went to, Doug Bowles and the people at the Speedway, Penske Entertainment, obviously, and Roger and everybody. And he worked out all the details for that. So we had 42 cars there back in June, paddocked in the F1 garages. And we ran both road course and oval. We had two nice 30-minute sessions on the oval, one each on Saturday and Sunday. And then Friday, Saturday, and Sunday, we ran the road course numerous times. And everybody really enjoyed it. It was the first time Vintage Indy cars had been back on track at Indianapolis Motor Speedway since 2019, and the last HRE event, Historic Racing Exhibition event, that the museum used to do on race weekend on the oval. So we're hoping to build off that. I've since heard from Tony, post weekend, and he was thrilled. Penske was thrilled. I'm told everybody really thought it came off well. We didn't have any issues at all. And Tony's already invited us back this coming year, 2023, to do that event again. And I know he's working on a long-term contract to keep SVRA at Indianapolis. He realizes that it is the crown jewel and it is important that SVRA be there going forward. And they, once again, just like up at Road America for the WeatherTech event, there were probably close to over 400 entries. Some of those grids for different classes were very deep. And I think he was very pleased with everything. We had a massive crowd in the F1 garages on Saturday, and probably equally as large a crowd on Sunday. Tony was very happy with the gate on Saturday, I know for a fact, and we're really looking forward to working with him in the future and the Speedway and Roger and going forward with that event.
Hey, Mike, the power plants that are in those cars, are they the original, or not the original, but what was in them when they did race? And if so, are they detuned, or what's the story there?
Well, for the most part, in 90%, 95% of the cars, Paul, they are period correct. They have turbo offies, 255 offies, 270 offies, Ford 4-camera, normally aspirated, or a turbo version, or a stock block if they ran with a stock block. There are a handful of cars that the later Indy cars that ran with IRL engines, the Oldsmobile and Chevys and stuff,
Right.
that have a stock block Chevy in them. They run flawlessly. They're great looking cars. They're fan favorites. And we also allow a handful of tribute cars. We've got several members that have continuation roadsters that were either built by AJ Watson or Gary Babineau or Tom McGriff. These are stunning cars, the number 98 Old Calhoun and the 64 winning Foyt car and things like that. So it makes for a good show. So they're not 100% pure in that respect, but for the most part they are. Most of these cars are meticulously restored with period correct parts and engines, rear ends and whatnot.
Bob, you have a question for Mike?
Well, I was just, and we'd had a conversation earlier. I was just thinking about some of the newer cars, the IRL cars and so on that use the Oldsmobile engine. I thought it was interesting that for those to use a period engine, you have to have a computer program that no longer exists to even start them up. Isn't that right, Mike?
That's absolutely correct. You have to have a period correct laptop for starters.
Oh, yeah.
And then you have to be fortunate enough to know somebody that's got the software. Joe Snyder and Billy Throckmorton both have that software, for instance, for the IRL Oldsmobile engine. And it's not an easy thing to get running and to start. If we walk out here in the shop in a few minutes, I'll show you a 2001 Dallara. It's a customer car for Rick Duman, and they just got it running, and they had fits and starts with the software with it. I mean, it's a different breed of cat from the old days,
Right.
obviously. And
Yeah,
the
take us on a tour.
new cars that we see today in IndyCar are even more complicated in that respect. So.
Yeah, I found that very interesting. I think Paul mentioned it. Yeah, let's do the tour.
Yeah.
We've talked about that.
As you walk out to do the tour, I'm anxious to hear your best Robin Miller story, Mike.
Okay, well, bear with me. I'm gonna have to put on my glasses and turn the phone around here so you guys can see everything that we're
All
gonna.
right.
And I'm in my office right now, and there's some great memorabilia in here. These paintings, which some of your viewers may have seen from the background. I got those from Parnelli, and Paul may remember these paintings that they hung in the Ontario Motor Speedway Victory Circle Club years ago. So anyway, they're here now.
Wow.
So this is one part of the shop, and there's a lot of cars in here. Here's this is the Bobby Youngster Wilson ID that goes just about everywhere with us. Ted, it's been for
We're having, or I am trouble with the audio, Mike.
Yeah.
We had local software to get it running. This allows you to get refocus and stuff, acceleration, local. Last year, we got 2002.
That's almost like going into a Santa workshop, people who love that. Mike, can you hear me? Mike, we're having a bit audio problem. The video is great as you are displaying these vintage cars. So if you could go back to you being on camera.
Okay.
There we go.
Now we can hear you.
I'm sorry, we lost sound there. I'll move back up here a little bit so everybody can see. I do apologize. This is the 72 Eagle, the Olsenite Eagle, driven by Bobby Unser. And a lot of people will well remember this car. Pole winning Eagle. They built 29 of these in 1972. And a very popular car. You needed an Eagle or a McLaren to win back then. This engine in the background here is Mario Andretti's actual winning engine from 1969 at the 500. And it bears all the USAC stamps and marks from the Speedway to well document that. This is an Epperle laydown that was driven by Tony Bettenhausen, the last car that he drove prior to his death, and the car that he was assigned that year. And then it went to Don Branson. This is also the first car that Indy car Parnelli Jones ever drove. Didn't race it, but did drive it in practice. The nose in the background there is Gordon Johncock's nose from his front row car in '67 with Dan Gurney and Mario. We've got Walt Faulkner's Agajani in '98. Offie, the pole winning car from 1950, the actual car. 962 Porsche that finished 4th and 7th at Le Mans. It was a Kremer team car. Little Al's rookie year Eagle. This Eagle was just up at Road America about a week ago, and it's a running car. I mentioned that this is a 2002 Dallara. It was driven the last 7 races of 2002 by Tony Renna, but more importantly, this car was Dario Franchitti's rookie year car for Team Green. Team Green was a kart team, and it was a one-off, and they sold it to Tom Kelly right after the 500 for Tony Renna to drive. In the background is a Bill Finley creation. This is Old Herman, and it's going to get restored. Johnny Parsons famously drove this from 72 to 79. This car was on the pole at the Hoosier 100 2 times. 75 and 76. I think in 76 his fast time stood for 13 years. It was part of a team car with their Eagle. The car was owned by both cars, Tassie Vadas, and Airway, a local department store here in Indianapolis, sponsored it along with WNAP, which was the most popular rock and roll station, FM station in Indianapolis. The Wrath of the Buzzard, as Paul will remember back in the day.
I was a news guy there. Yeah.
There you go. This is a famous car. This is the car that Rick Mears tried to chase Gordy down with for the win and came up a little short, and it's a restored running car.
Now, who owns that
Formula
car, Mike?
5000 car that Chris Amon drove in the very first Long Beach Grand Prix. It's unrestored. And then this is the American Spirit AMC Indy car that Warner Hodgson's team built that was assigned to Neil Bonnet, but Jerry Sneva ended up running it in the 500, and that's an interesting story in itself, how he came to qualify. And then another Mears car here. This is the Penske car that Rick Mears was in when he was burned in the pit row fire. All restored and in running condition. And we'll walk in the other room. There's a lot of memorabilia here. Johnny Lightning shirt of mine, and this is a pretty big place. So we're prepping cars for Nashville, and this is one of them that's being prepped for Nashville. And this is Johnny Rutherford 77 Budweiser McLaren Cosworth. It's an M24 McLaren, and it's going down to Nashville, and they're going to fire it up in the morning. And we've got another M24 here. I want to get around the forklift. There's the nose for the Bud McLaren. This is a nose for Rick Mears Penske PC6, which is also going to Nashville. This is the Mario Andretti Cam 2 M24 McLaren when he drove for Penske. This is getting prepped to go to Nashville. And this car did go to Nashville last year, and Zach Brown drove it for us.
Huh.
So we're hoping Zach has expressed an interest in driving a car at Nashville this year. Hopefully that'll happen. In the background is unrestored M24 or Penske, and that's Tom Sneva's 200-mile-an-hour car.
Wow.
Restored incorrectly. It's got a stock block Chevy in it, but it's going to be restored in the very near future back to its proper engine and whatnot. And this is the PC6, the Rick Mears car that's getting ready to go down to Nashville with us. And in the background, you see these shelves, and these are all cars that are in queue to be restored. We've got a couple Penske's up there. The number 11 car in the background is Roger McCluskey's AMC Eagle. It's a 74 Eagle. We have 2 fully restored Gerhardt Fords. They're both George Walther Dayton Special, steel wheel specials. We have a 66 and a 67. One was driven by Bud Tingelstad, and the other was driven by Carl Williams, who a lot of older Indy fans would remember.
Typically, how long does it take to restore those, Mike?
It's upwards of 2 years. It's a labor of love. Rick Duman owns Duman Turn 4 Restoration, or D24R as we call it. And he's an award-winning former Indy 500 chief mechanic, USAC midget driver. And his father, Ronnie Duman, was a 5-time Indy 500 starter. So when he restores a car, he's restoring it in the condition that you could put it on the grid at Indianapolis. I mean, they're just flawlessly restored. A lot of jackets in here of mine and Rick's, and driving uniform of Ronnie Duman's. And then I know you want to see this car, Denny, because this is the 1930 two-man Miller of Shorty Cantlin's.
Wow.
I love that. I happen to be a Shorty Cantlin fan anyway. Show how tight the cockpit is on that, Mike.
It's pretty tight. Those riding mechanics were little guys. So this would have been the seat right here for the riding mechanic. They were so tight that the riding mechanic would keep their arms, some of them around the driver. Not a lot of room, more room than a modern Indy car, but for two men, you know, fully grown men, pretty tight.
But Shorty Cantlin, those who don't know him, was small anyway. He was about 5'4". And as a rookie, he finished second to Billy Arnold in 1930. And then
and in this car, he qualified, as you said, he qualified third and finished second.
Wow.
He was from Paris, Illinois, ran a lot of 500s, lost his life in the 47 500 when he hit the wall. His accident was one of those situations where they left the car there for the rest of the race. But the other thing that I mentioned to everybody when I show this car to people that visit here is the fact that this particular Miller ran more 500s than any Miller that was ever built. This car's first race was in 1930 and its last was in the post-war era of 47.
Wow.
So it's kind of unique in that respect. And it's also the most valuable car here. This car is worth, several $1 million. So it's a work of art. The cowl and the body worker up here.
Oh, Christmas is coming up fairly soon. If you have
get out your
something that you're wondering I might want or something. So
here's an interesting car that.
That's a neat tour that you've given us, but we can't let you get away without giving your best Robin Miller story.
Well, I have a couple of Robin Miller stories. When I was working for Vels Parnelli Jones in 72. That's when I first met Robin, and he was helping Bill Finley, and Bill Finley's garages in the old gasoline alley area were just across from Vels Parnelli Jones, and Robin and I were close in age. So we became pretty good friends early on. And, he was working part-time for Finley as just a helper. And I was full-time with Vels Parnelli Jones. And, we remained friends for over 50 years. And we have a lot of good stories. I think one of the funnier stories is when I was back here one May, he called me up and he told me he bought a midget. He was going USAC midget racing, and I thought he was pulling my leg. And he goes, no, you have to come over and see my car. And he kept it on 16th Street, kind of across the speedway behind what was then Mike Smith's speed shop. So he took me over there and showed me the midget. And, he'd had some Formula Ford experience, but I thought, oh my gosh. But, it turned out that he did really well. He became very accepted by those guys, and they took him under his wing, and the rest is history.
Yeah.
Well, Mike and I then went to Working Man's Tavern, and they
Working Man's Friend.
Working Man's Friend. Yeah.
Okay. And they have a Robin Miller special. So there's a way of plugging that, and we both ate that. I didn't eat the onions part of it.
Well, Working Man's Friend, in my opinion, has the best cheeseburger in the city of Indianapolis.
Yeah.
I don't know, for all I know, maybe the state of Indiana. But Robin liked his cheeseburger a certain way, and they have a middle bun there on their double cheeseburgers. And Robin didn't want the middle bun, and he always wanted, I think, mustard and pickle on his. And
right.
He didn't want all, everything that they normally put on that double cheeseburger. So if you go there, you can order a Robin Miller. You can order a cheeseburger and ask for it Robin Miller way.
Well, Mike, did you have fun today on our show?
I had a great time, and I hope you enjoyed having me.
We do.
Yeah.
And Hopefully now, like Johnny Carson, the guest reappears every now and then. You would consider.
Yeah, I'd love to come back. There's a lot of stories, and I enjoy the history of Indianapolis and IndyCar racing, and guys like Bob Gates. I'm a fan of Bob Gates, and obviously Paul Page, and I give you high marks for what you're doing, Denny. So,
Well, thank you very much.
I'd really love to come back.
We're going to do two things, final thoughts, and then we're going to mention what's going to happen next week. And you may want to wrap that up as your final thoughts. So, Paul, your final thoughts over this weekend and what's coming up?
Well, more toward what's coming up. By the way, the background is the view the broadcast booth has at the Indianapolis Motor Speedway. I was going to try and say we're there now, and I couldn't. Yeah, I think especially with the Newgarden thing, this weekend is going to be very interesting to see what comes out of that. And I would like to make mention that on the 5th of August, I'll be at the Savoy Car Museum outside of Atlanta. And, we're going to do a little Q&A and stuff like that. And I've not been to this one yet, and I hear it's really, really great. So that's going to be fun too. And I think you can still get tickets to it. So that's it. That's all I got.
Bob, how about you? Your comments on this past weekend and the upcoming doubleheader with NASCAR and IndyCar?
Well, looking forward to that. Always looking forward to some racing, especially at the Speedway. I think this was last weekend, maybe 4 consecutive races where IndyCar really had some very, very nice crowds. And so I hope they can continue that into this weekend. I know that's been a challenge for NASCAR at the Speedway. So hopefully some of that Penske magic of the past 4 races will rub off on this weekend as well. Should be fun.
And Mike, I assume you're going to be out there too.
I'll be out there. I'm really looking forward to it. Got an invite up to a suite, so should be fun. And, it's always fun to be in a suite at the Indianapolis Motor Speedway.
I know it. And you lucky guys, I'm out here in Redondo Beach, and you're close to Long's Donuts and everything.
And Redondo, that I feel for you. That's a terrible place to be.
So, but anyway, it's been an interesting week. We wish total health for Joseph Newgarden and also McFadden as well. And we will be back next week to cover what happened at the Indianapolis Motor Speedway with both IndyCar and NASCAR. So for Paul Page and Bob Gates and Mike Lashmett, this is Denny Miller wishing you Godspeed and see you next week.